Hello everyone, I'm home. Welcome back to my channel. I thought I'd pop on here in the middle of the week to give you a short video before I go to the Covered Bridge Festival this weekend, and I'll give you guys a big rundown about that. I'll try to take lots and lots of pictures so we don't miss anything. Well, we're finally getting that much needed rain. We haven't had hardly any rain, and the leaves are really falling even though there hasn't been much change in color. You can see there in the tree that there's a little bit of orange and yellow coming on, and they must fall off as soon as they come on because we've got a lot on the ground. But I got my umbrella out and went down to the mailbox. I found this umbrella at the thrift store for $1, and I just love it because it's a beautiful fall color. And I wanted to tell you guys thank you for your great support in the last couple of weeks. So my channel has grown quite a bit, and I'd like to invite you to subscribe if you have not. And I would also like to ask you all to leave a comment telling me where you're from, just the state or the country. I would like to see how far my videos are reaching. I know I talked to a girl who's from Australia, and one from Japan, and several from the UK. And I'd just kind of like to know where everybody's from. So if you could just leave a real quick message down there in the comment section of where you're from, I would appreciate it so much. And I've got a lot of neat stuff to show you today, and let's get on with the video. I just love leaves, and we've had some really cool nights, so we're starting to get some, and I like to see every day the transition from green to gold and yellow and orange, but it seems like some days I'll miss it, and one day the tree's green, the next day it's bright, and then all the leaves are falling. But it's funny how leaves are actually dying as they bloom into these gorgeous colors, and I love them. And when I was a little girl, I was a brownie, and my mom was our leader, and she would troop us all over town picking up leaves, and we would dry them and put them in books and try to go to the library and find out what they all were. And I love to do that, and I do it to this day. It's hard for me to walk past a pretty leaf on the ground and not press it between a heavy book page. And I'll go to Brad's, and he has these big sycamore leaves that are just beautiful, and I've framed some, and I've got them laying around my house. I just love them, and I probably always will. But it's really fun to watch them change from green to the beautiful fall colors. Now, this is one of my mums in one of the baskets that I painted with the watered down paint to make it look more antique. One of you said, oh, I'm going to try that. It's really a good idea, because sometimes you find baskets that have a pretty shape to them, but they look too modern or they look too dated. Sometimes dated isn't good, and you can make them look antique if they're the right style of basket. Now, a gracious friend dropped off a couple of mums to me the other day, and I put them on these pedestals on each side of my garage door with a little pumpkin. Thank you, Sue. And then my sedum is in full bloom. It's just beautiful. And the other day I was noticing my mums aren't completely bloomed out yet. There's still some buds on there. And this little witch pillow, I found it at the thrift store for 99 cents. And it's one of those zippered ones that you just tuck your pillow in. Well, this pillow that you saw earlier that I had also thrifted is really fat, and it was so hard to get into that zippered thing, but I made it, and I got it all put in there, and I went ahead and put it out because it is the first week of October. We're going into the second week, so I went ahead and turned my little pumpkin around so his scary face would show. And I prefer just the fall designs and leaves and colors and stuff, but a little bit of this doesn't look too Halloween, I don't think. And soon I'll light up the little pumpkin and he'll look scary in the dark. And then you guys remember my little drawer I found at the thrift store. I think I gave $1 for that. It had the pretty little birds in it that somebody probably hand painted, and they were so pretty. Well, I had stood it up and decided what I was going to do with it, and I told you guys you probably knew what I had planned to do, and you're right. I'm making another little primitive cabinet. I put some shelves in it with some furring strips, and I put a new piece of trim across the bottom to cover up the straight legs that it had. Washed it all down with watered down brown paint, and then I started to paint it the mustard color, which is called Golden Sunset is the name of the color. And I painted the whole thing, and while it was drying, I located this in my garage. I'm telling you what, this little, I don't know what it is, holds books or something. I got it for $1 at a yard sale years ago. It's been in my garage for probably 3 years, trying to wait for me to decide what to do with it. So I washed it down with the brown paint. I can't sit still. I had to do this while the other was drying. And then I realized it was sanded smooth. I feel sorry for carpenters who make these little cabinets because they sand them smooth, and then I go along with a hammer and screwdriver and beat them all up. I beat it up real good, washed it down with the watered down brown paint. Then I put the mustard color paint on it. I'm kind of on a mustard kick right now. It's just a beautiful color for fall. It's a beautiful color for primitives. And you can't really see it here because it's not completely dry. But it doesn't really matter what it looks like, because when you wipe the stain on it and wipe it right off, it ends up looking exactly like an old mustard piece. So I was real happy with it, and I'll show you in a little bit what I did with it. And I can't believe it's set in my garage, probably years. So then my little cabinet was dry, and I took it in the house, and I think I am going to put it up on feet. But I put all my little glass things in it from my little children's table. Now the little piece on top is the drawer handle, and I think it looks just like a pretty little decorative ornament on top of the little cabinet. And it matches, this is the big mustard cabinet that I have in my living room, and I think that it matches it pretty darn good. Like I said, when I got this mustard cabinet off of a friend of mine, I bought it out of her garage. This lady used to sell stuff out of her garage. And I said to her, oh, I love that. And she said, oh, yes, that mustard cabinet's just beautiful. And the next time I saw her, I said, why did they call that a mustard cabinet? I thought maybe, I didn't know, guys, why they called it that. And she said, because it's mustard color. I didn't know. So anyway, I fell in love with that. And here it is, decorated different ways. I just set it on a little shelf. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. It's just a cute little 99-cent shelf that I made look primitive with mustard-colored paint and stain and hammers and nails beating it up. I tapped some nails in it to make some wormholes. Had wormholes in those other boards the other day and filled those with sealer. And then I'm making new wood wormholes. But I love it. You can't stop me, guys. Then I found this little mask for $1 at a yard sale. It's lace, and it's pretty. So we go for a little drive the other day, and we're noticing that a lot of the corn has already been cut. A lot of the beans have. They're really working hard. We've had a little bit of rain, so the fields are beautiful, though. They're all half done or done, and it's such a pretty sight to see once they get it all done, because if they have a really wet harvest season, they have a hard time getting it all in. So we're driving along, and I told my husband, we had gone to Planet Fitness, and we were on our way home from there, and while he was in the Planet Fitness talking to the guys right as we left, I went on out to the car, and I called and ordered a pizza for him at Arnie's. He loves their mushroom pizza. I don't care for their pizza at all, but he loves it. So he gets in the car, and I decide to trick him. And I said, hey, well, I went a different direction on the way home. And he didn't say anything. And I kept driving and driving. And finally I said, are you going to ask me where we're going? And he said, well, where are we going? And he said, I thought you were just going to take a little drive. I said, no. I said, I almost hate to tell you this, but I bought something off Facebook Marketplace while you were in there talking to those kids. And he said, what'd you buy? And I said, well, you'll just have to see. I said, we should have went and got Brad, though, because it's going to weigh about 900 pounds. He said, what is it? I said, oh, I don't want to tell you because I don't have room for it and I don't need it. And he said, well, I want you to have what you want. He said, get it and we'll get it home. He said, well, that guy will help us, whoever we're getting it from. I said, I'm not even sure where we're going because, see, I had to drive to the pizza place without him knowing where we were going. So I was going out through the country and everything. So we drove and drove and drove. And he said, do you have any idea where this person lives? And I said, kind of. I said, you know, the friend of the boys down there by Briscoe Road? I said, I think it's down in that area somewhere. Well, we got to Briscoe Road, and I said, no, that's not it. So we kept driving, and he never said a thing. He just was fine with it. And I knew he was hungry because we were going to go home and eat supper. So finally, I get to the little town, Pine Village, where the Arnie's is, and he said, I thought they lived out in the country. And I said, no, I think it's here in town. I said, I don't know. So I pulled up to Arnie's, and I pulled up, and I said, you got a mushroom pizza waiting for you in there. And he said, is that what this was all about? I said, yeah, I was going to surprise you. And he said, well, that's a good surprise. So he went in and got him a mushroom pizza, got me a half a Strom, which I do like those. And I got so tickled at Kevin. We were sitting at a stop sign, and he hollered at these dogs, and they weren't real They were little statue dogs. I said, Kevin, those dogs. He said, come here, pup. I said, those dogs aren't real, Kevin. So anyway, we drove around eating our pizza and stromboli and enjoying the pretty area. And I wanted you guys to see some of our rural area. This was so cute. I don't know who these people are, but they had a little farm stand. And it was made out of the bed of an old truck, which I thought was just darling. So I kept stopping and looking to make sure nothing was coming up behind us so that I could take pictures. And when I drove a school bus, there was this big road that's just a connection between two little tiny towns, and it's real long and windy, and if you didn't know that road was there, you would never know. And when the bus superintendent told me to go down that road, he said it's called the Boulevard. And I thought that was such a funny name for such a hick town country road. And then, let's see, we get to town where the pizza was, and there was road construction. Now, this is a little one-horse town like ours, and this is what it looks like. They're fixing the road, and you see a lot of tractors and old trucks and painted signs, and it's a neat little town. Now, this town is consolidated with us now as Seeger, but back in the day, my husband played ball for Seeger, and they were big rivals against Pine Village. But we enjoyed it, and I don't know if you guys have an Arnie's near you. I think it's an Indiana thing. I'm not real sure. It says serving Indiana for over 50 years, but it could be in other states. I don't know. I've never seen one in another state, but it's a good place to eat. Like I said, I'm not crazy about their pizza, but their strombolis are off the charts. And then we drove around a little longer and went through the little town of Kramer. And Kramer's a little one-horse town as well. We have a lot of those. And we're coming up, this is the land where a big resort used to be called Mudlavia Resort. It was a big hotel. And history says that in 1884, a Civil War soldier named Samuel Story discovered a spring there. And when he drank the water, his rheumatoid arthritis started feeling better, and he discovered or believed that they had healing properties in the water. Now, these rose bushes are there, and this is just my take on this. I think they're original from Mudlavia. I'm just going to say that because this is Mudlavia. Isn't it wonderful? This is an old postcard. A lot of people around here collect postcards of it. But anyway, this Samuel Story discovered it in like 1884, and someone came along and built this hotel and kind of advertised it as the healing waters of their spring water. And the healing properties were in the mud, and they had mud baths, and it opened on Christmas Day in 1890. And unfortunately, it burnt down on February 29th of 1920. And then they built another one that was not as big, and it burnt down in 1968. And then they built another little thing, and it burned down in 1974. And I guess they finally just gave up on it. But I particularly like the pictures that show people in the picture. So if you're interested in this story, Mudlavia Hotel, Kramer, Indiana, or sometimes it's listed as Attica, Indiana. Go on there, and there's pictures and stories, and it's a really interesting thing. And if I had, it would take probably $1 billion, I would rebuild it. I love the idea of that lodge down in that area. This is the road that gets to it. Oh my gosh, it's so beautiful. And Warren County is just a beautiful county. There's hardly any place you can go, even with all the little one-horse towns. It's just, I don't know, sentimental and sweet. And this reminds me of a town that like Bonnie and Clyde would have lived in. And they have there's a place called the Potholes. It's just beautiful. And then on the way home, we saw a big storm come rolling in, but we got home and I had clothes on the line. Guys, I've been putting clothes on the line for, pretty much all summer, and I just love it. And some days I'll put the clothes on the line and we'll take off, and then I'll be like, oh my gosh, if it's going to rain, I got to get home. So I got home and got my clothes off the line, and I started packaging up some primitives that I'm getting ready to send out. These are miniatures. I have 3 orders to send out, and then I have a gift to send out. And I just wanted to talk to you guys for a minute about my mini Prim, since we're talking about the mustard colors and everything. This little pitcher is like a mustard color. And then this little crock, I stacked some of those little potpourri pumpkins. And someone told me what those pumpkins were called. I'm going to have to look that up again. But they come in like potpourri pots with the dried things that you put in your potpourri. But when I'm making my miniatures, this is a little wooden trencher bowl. I like to make them out of different things. Sometimes I carve them out of wood, which takes forever. Sometimes I use clay. Sometimes I use cardboard or paper mache mixtures. But my end result, my objective is to get it looking as much like a primitive piece as I can to put into my miniature projects. So as you can see, those little seed pods, whatever they are, they look like pumpkins, and they're miniature. They're very tiny. They look great in the bowl, and as long as the bowl looks like a primitive, I'm happy if it looks good. Now that little clay pot there in the back is an assault glazed pottery piece. Obviously it's made out of clay, but it looks good in the scene, and that's kind of what I go for. So I'm kind of scared to send these out. That's a little breadboard with a pumpkin on it because they're fragile. And then I made a couple more little stockings and got out some of my Halloween decor to hang around. Some of that picture from there, I think I got it at Dollar Tree several years ago, and I thought it looked really pretty. Sometimes Dollar Tree surprises you. And then I made the little stocking, and I will say this little stocking, as cute as it is, the little pumpkin didn't show up on it very good, but when you see it in person you can see it a lot better. But once all the flowers are stuck down in it, I think it'll be really cute. So I made about 6 of those this week. I like to sit in my chair and watch YouTube channels with primitive furniture and antiques and sit there and sew while I'm watching them. Now, I've been seeing a lot of videos where the women are just rushing out to Walmart to get the Pioneer Woman items that are like the pots and pans and the pitchers, and she's got this antique looking pattern, and I think it's wonderful. The brown, it comes in brown, blue, and green. Well, here's what I don't understand. Our Walmart has this brown pattern. The Walmart up where my sons live, they have a few pieces of the blue, but they don't have it all. I don't understand why they don't put all 3 colors in every store, because now you got to go searching for it. And I guess you could go online and buy it. This is a huge bowl. I think it's just beautiful. And I would get this stuff, but I have a lot of dishes, and I have a lot of old looking dishes. So I'm not going for it, but our store has the brown. Well, then as I'm walking up to the checkout, I see that they do have the dish towels in the green. So I'm not quite sure what that's all about, why Walmart can't get it together and get all their stuff in one store. But it was pretty to look at. And of course the green, it's called Agatha, the pattern. And that very much looks like this big platter that I got last week while I was thrifting. Now this is an antique piece that I got for $1.49, but it looks very much like the Pioneer Woman's Agatha pattern. And I guess it's all called Agatha. It's just in blue, green, or brown. So Walmart, you need to get it all into the stores. Then not much thrifting this week. I did pop into the Mission. It was packed. They were saying no more donations. You can see here how packed it was. I saw a few cute things like this little pot I thought was real cute, but I've got one just about like it, so I didn't buy it. Saw another one of those little jars like I put on my secretary in my bathroom, but I didn't get it because I don't need it. I thought these would be real pretty for fall, but they only had 2 plates. Then I saw this big gorgeous picture in a long frame, and I thought it was gorgeous, but I don't know if you can see here, it was really rippled in the back, and it's because it needs a harder piece of cardboard and more pushed into the glass, and I wasn't sure if it was already ruined by being too wrinkled or if I could fix it. But it was a beautiful print. And then this print was beautiful, and I had this at one time, but the mat was kind of dated with the orange and the green, which would go with my house just fine. But the picture was just a little bit faded, and they wanted a lot for it. But I thought she was awful sweet, and I don't know whatever happened to mine. Maybe I gave it to someone, but that's a precious little picture. And I would have went for this when I was a teenager all day long. My favorite color combination when I was young was lime green and hot pink, fuchsia. And I had a lot of things in my room that color. And when I see stuff like that, it always just harkens me back to being a teenager again. And I am going to work on that teenager's miniature bedroom. I've been working on it, but I'm not ready to show you guys yet. And this thrift store does a really good job of decorating. They always have it real festive looking when you go in there. They're playing music, Christian music, and it's just a real cheerful place to go into, and they're so friendly. But I really didn't buy much today. I bought a battery-operated candle, which are $8.95 in the stores, and it was like 99 cents. So I don't know if you guys get tired of seeing what food I make. I made hamburger steaks the other night with brown gravy out of a package, which I don't like to do, but I was in a hurry, green beans and applesauce. But the reason I'm showing you guys this from time to time is I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes it's like, what am I going to have for supper? It's hard telling what you're going to have every night because there's only so many things you can make unless you want to get real creative. So we have a page on Facebook called What's for Dinner, and I go on there a lot to see what other people in our community are making, and it gives me ideas. And we shouldn't really need that much inspiration. We know what to make, but sometimes it's just difficult. So I just thought, I'm going to show you guys from time to time what I'm making, and it might inspire you when you don't know what to make for supper. And you can join me on Instagram at MarcyJo631, and I'm going to have a big video for you. I'm going to try to make an hour-long video of the covered bridge. It might have to be a two-parter because I'm taking lots of pictures, and we're going to take it all in. And as always, I love you guys from the bottom of my heart. Can't wait to see you again.